We're trying to solve a problem here.
Tomorrow's going to be very exciting.
We are so excited about the future.
I will build your roads.
We don't need roads.
Welcome back to Solving for Tomorrow. I'm your host, Brian Geisel, and this is our Season 1 finale. And to close it out, we're joined by Mike Zeppieri, Vice President of Emerging Technology at Skanska. Mike brings a unique perspective shaped by his background in both military and aerospace. And now he's helping transform one of the most risk-conscious industries, construction. From AI copilots and drones to mass timber and blockchain, Mike is reimagining how we build the future. Let's get started. So let me dive into some rapid fire stuff first. Okay. So what's one piece of technology you can't live without?
Okay, so there's the obvious answers, right? Computers, smartphones, what have you, the cloud.
Yeah.
But I'm going to go back to my teenage me.
Okay.
So, so as a Gen Xer, like all the technologies I just rattled off, I remember what the world was like analog. So take any of those things away from me.
Yeah.
I could take a step back to operating the way I did before those technologies existed. But if I think of a technology that entered into my life that was, I think, iconic and my life changed after it, I wouldn't want to take it away.
Okay.
It was the Sony Walkman. And the reason being is like music has always been a big part of my life. I'm a mediocre guitarist. I love heavy metal.
Nice.
I love concerts and the energy of a show. So for me, like the tech stack of music is like indispensable. Like that's the one.
That's
I can't
awesome.
live without.
That's awesome. And then remember the Walkman spawned the like you would go to the gym with like a pizza on your hip when we had the like CD player and they had like CD. They would have this thing that could play like a CD like the Walkman, except instead of tapes, it was CDs.
Yeah. The early running ones had the it was on the back of the Walkman, and your hand could slide in it. You literally had the Walkman on the disc on your hand, so you were running, so you looked ridiculous. It looked like you were carrying a frisbee. But I like the old cassette ones, like the ability to make your first mixtapes. Even like the bass boost. Like remember how intense that was, like when you got the first Walkman that had the bass boost, and like you could experience music through like a whole other level with that. So
the technology thing I think is cool is like back then they kept adding more memory to the CD players because they were almost like a record, like a vinyl. You could skip. Like if the laser didn't hit the whole CD. So what they would do is they would record like 10 seconds early. And then if they missed stuff, they would wait till they came back around to pick it up on the CD. And now with SSDs, you don't have that issue anymore. So it's interesting the technology things we solve along the way, and then maybe don't need that solution later when some other solution comes out and pushes it out.
Yeah, there's a couple artists that would do things creatively with that. So there was some artist that would put a hidden track at like track 100 at the end of it. So like if you left the CD going and you thought it was over, and then you're at track 100, and there would be like a hidden clip. And the band Typo Negative, which is one of my favorites, they actually, one of their entry tracks from one of their albums is the sound of a CD skipping to make you think that there was something wrong with the CD. So it starts skipping, and then they come on, and then they kind of joke around and like tease the band. So
that's awesome.
All good fun.
That's awesome. All right, what's one piece of tech you kind of wish we didn't have?
So because I have two teenage daughters, I'm going to go with social media, because that is the bane of my existence right now. As a parent, so I have to think back to my parents. For them, it was probably MTV. Like MTV was a corrupting influence, and they probably didn't like the fact that me and my brother were watching MTV because of what we were getting exposed to, I would say, outside of their control. I think social media has taken that to a whole other level. So having two teenage daughters, that's a technology that either I wish didn't exist, or if it did exist, if I have to live in a world where it does exist, more parental controls to be able to monitor it. The other one I'm going to go with, which is we can dive into later, is actually ChatGPT. Because I feel the entrance of ChatGPT into the data conversation has created a leap forward, like an undisputable leap forward, but also a distraction.
Yeah.
And we can dive into that.
Oh, okay. I like it. Okay, we're definitely doing that. Okay. what's one thing that you look forward to in the future as a piece of technology, and you can wave a magic wand at it? It doesn't have to exist. Maybe it's impossible, but what might be coming, or do you look forward to flying cars or whatever?
I'm waiting for the time machine. That's
Okay,
that's
there you
one I
go.
want. That's
There
the
you
one I
go.
want. So I
Forward or back?
well, so as a futurist and a history buff, I want to go both ways, but as an observer. So I wouldn't change anything, but there are
Wouldn't you?
no. Well, maybe a couple if we want to go there. But I think it would be interesting to observe moments in history in the past. Because I think that would be enjoyable. But I'm also curious about, as a futurist, where will we be as a species 100 years, 300, 500 years from now? So I think the time machine going forward and back would be pretty cool.
If we could just go faster than the speed of light and get a big enough telescope, we could at least see what was happening if it wasn't a cloudy day.
Oh, there you go.
There's always that.
So is that.
And okay, so the next one leads right into this. If you could take a VR headset or however you want to think about it, and you could go anywhere and any place, forward, back in time, current time, where would that be?
So I'd go back, but I would prefer the time machine to VR because I find VR to be more distracting than immersive. So I've done stuff with VR, and I think to a point. I mean, I've played the Star Wars games, and it's fun to a point, but then it becomes. I find it almost disorienting and takes away from the experience. So I think if given the choice between VR and time machine, I'd go back on the time machine to experience things. But the time periods that I am most fascinated with are ancient Greece, ancient Rome. I mean, without a doubt, I find like those societies. Probably because I had the privilege of living in Europe for a number of years, so I've seen the remnants of those civilizations. So to actually see them when they were living, breathing, vibrant would be cool. And then just given my military background and a lot of the time that I've spent taking military history classes, I mean, there's so many decisive battles that have changed the course of civilization. So just to have been able to observe those battles, because some of them, the records of them are scant. We know the battle existed. We know very little in terms of like the historical record, but to actually, I mean, a little bit kind of like the Indiana Jones angle, to actually go back and witness it and see what it was like, both in terms of the means and methods of warfare and also what happened on the battlefield itself, the decisions the commanders made, the troop movements. I mean, I find all that fascinating. So
yeah. Oh, that's very cool. That's very cool. What's one robot you wish you had in your life?
So because I'm a big Star Wars nerd, and for people who know me and that are listening to this, they're going to assume I'm going to go with the Star Wars robots. But I'm actually going to go with Vincent from The Black Hole, the Disney movie from the 80s. So Disney made this really dystopian science fiction, a very atypical Disney, like very dark. I mean, it's nightmare fuel for, if you think about it, for like young kids. I mean, there was some really dark stuff in that movie. But the Vincent robot, I mean, very similar to R2-D2, like astromech droid kind of utility, but I just always found the design of it to be very fascinating, like kind of very iconic, very different than some of the other robots from like the late 70s, early 80s science fiction, which all were kind of gravitating to a similar aesthetic. Like I thought the design of it was a really cool robot, so I'm going with Vincent from The Black Hole.
Okay, I like it. Yeah, you led in with Star Wars. I was like, is he going R2-D2 or a BB-8?
It's probably best that we just avoid Star Wars because I'll take up the whole podcast talking about Star Wars. So
I love it. I had a friend who was working on a real life R2-D2 robot and like building it from scratch, like bending the aluminum, like everything. And he had a very good replica going from the mechanical side and was like working on the electronics and the software to make it beep boop and everything. It was pretty awesome. Yeah. Okay. So let's give me just a real quick, what are you doing today? And just give a quick overview so people understand where you're coming from and kind of why we're talking about some of the topics that we're talking about today.
Okay. So I lead the emerging technology team for Skanska USA Building. So Skanska USA Building is one of 3 construction business units in the United States. So Skanska is a Swedish-based global construction company. So we are the U.S. entity of their global business. Within the kind of the boundaries of what our business unit does. So if you think about construction, horizontal, vertical, or development, and that's what each of the three business units in Skanska USA focus on. So I'm in the building business unit, so we're focused on vertical construction. And I would say
that's like skyscrapers.
Yeah, skyscrapers, hospitals, airports, buildings. Where civil is more horizontal, roads, bridges. So even driving here from the city, like all the interchanges, like the Pike and 495 interchange, where they're rerouting bridges and entire flows of traffic. Like that's what our civil group is very good at. Is like not just the building of it, but the planning and the logistics of it. If you think about it, it's especially when you're dealing with arteries that are in use, how disrupted it is to traffic patterns to reroute things. It's a fascinating puzzle. And technology plays a big part in how we approach that. So if I take a step back, like what I do is really almost parallels and mirrors what our industry has gone through over the last 12 years. So I kind of alluded to the fact that I was in the military. So I started my career in the Army. Thought I was going to go into construction, but detoured into aerospace for a decade, where I got a chance to,
as most people about to go into construction do.
That's what they do. They go to aerospace. So what triggered that though was I was a military veteran looking for a job, a civilian job, and Boeing had just won an Army transformation contract, and a lot of veterans find themselves in defense and aerospace because there's a lot of veterans that work in those spaces. So there was some familiar and some new. Okay. It's still not construction, but it was a great place for me to land because I got to experience some of the digital transformations that were happening in manufacturing late 90s, early 2000s, which was a great, I think, building a foundation to build upon for when I did come to construction 12 years ago. Kind of mirrors the journey that construction has gone through. So when I came over to construction 12 years ago, if you were talking about innovation, you were primarily talking about building information models and virtual design and construction, which is basically working with 3D models.
Okay.
So 12 years ago, if you were...
Why am I doing 3D models for buildings in that?
For buildings?
Yeah.
So think about the design of buildings. Mm-hmm. Architects, they put them in drawings. So you've seen blueprints,
right?
2D drawings. I mean, that's how we've always done construction.
Yep.
As digital transformation has impacted construction and the design of things, 3D is just a more intuitive interface for many applications.
Yeah.
Design and also communicating the intent of design. So as architects and engineers adopted 3D tools for designing things, we as an industry had to adapt to how to leverage working in a 3D digital world. So getting out of 2D tactile drawings, so if you think about all it's kind of the ripple effects of digitizing that workflow. So taking a set of 2D drawings and you have a question about the intent of the design, or you need to mark something up for clarity or whatever.
Right.
All that done through paper is very inefficient. So the idea that you can move that to 3D, move that to digital, that was where the industry was kind of focused, I would say, 12 years ago. And the number of players was well known. Like there wasn't a lot of focus on disruption of our industry. The people who were digitizing or building the tools for our industry were well-known, well-established players. There wasn't a lot of startups. There wasn't attention. Just the whole disruption conversation really wasn't prevalent. It was just basic digitalization.
And this is sort of when?
Like about 12 years ago when I came over.
Okay.
Yeah, so that was the industry 12 years ago to, I would say, just prior to pre-pandemic. And I'd say what...
So like 2013-ish to like 2019?
Yeah, 2013 to 2019 was what our focus was. And then, but then something rapidly changed just prior to the pandemic. And then, so prior to the pandemic, other technology started to come into the conversation. So drones, robots, laser scanning. So suddenly there were these technologies that were finding applications in construction that were value added and interesting. So you needed a team to understand, comprehend, find the value, and then drive the adoption for the things that work. So our team started to expand its purview from just BIM and VDC 3D models to the additional technologies. Then the pandemic hit.
Okay.
And the pandemic created what I would say was a sea change adoption in technology and construction, because now we were forced to.
Yeah.
So where digital tools, digital methods,
Is this because you're working on buildings from home?
Because we're all now suddenly working from home. Although that didn't last very long. I mean, construction, we were back on site in pretty short order, but there was a moment in time where we were restricted to our preferred ways of working. Now we had to embrace very rapidly these digital ways of working, and then so digital tools then got their footing in our industry, and then in the wake of that was when I would say so like within the last 5 years, I think VC started to cast their eye towards construction as the next industry that was ripe for.
Spend $1 or $2 on construction in this world.
Just a tad. Yeah. So it's legacy industry, craft means and methods, huge opportunities for disruption. So now you've got all this energy, investment, excitement, and then people who are not from I would say the disruptors prior to that moment were people that came from the industry. Yep. So now you've got disruptors and technologists from outside the industry coming in trying to disrupt technology. So what my team does is really navigate all that for our company. So there's like I said, lots of energy, lots of excitement, lots of I think also hype.
Yeah.
That's out there. So what my team does is we work very closely with our project teams in the field to make sure we're solving for the right problems, evaluate the technologies that are available to us, pilot them, ensure that they actually deliver value, and then for the ones that do deliver value, we help with the scaling and implementation. So that's what my team does.
So you mentioned we were doing kind of 2D to 3D models in like 2012, 2013 kind of time frame.
And probably a little bit prior to that too. Probably like 2005, 2006 was when it really started to happen.
And I've seen those for visualizations, like so the humans can see what it's going to look like afterwards.
Yep.
Was it really just for that at that point?
There's a couple of different workflows that have developed over time. So coordination and clash detection is a big use case. So the idea that like your beam is where my electrical conduit needs to be, or your structural element is where an MEP component needs to be. So because each of those things are typically designed independently and then they're brought together.
Okay, yeah.
There's if you think about the complexity of a building, I mean, if we rip off the ceiling tiles here, you're going to see things going in every
There's HVAC
direction.
all over the place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And some of
There's
it.
a spy climbing through some of it.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, Tom Cruise is probably up there listening to us right now. So there's there's a method to the madness. And some of it, if you were to expose the ceilings and look at it, would make complete sense.
Yep.
But then you're occasionally going to see where something is routed in the most inefficient way possible because there's literally a structural beam in the way.
Yeah.
So the idea of coordination and clash detection is one, we obviously can't have things occupying the same physical space.
Right.
So where there are clashes where people think they have access to certain things, there's also the concept of sequencing. You know, if you think about think about doing a repair in your house when something is readily accessible and you have space to lay out tools, equipment, materials, pretty easy. But when you're in a very constrained space because it wasn't designed properly, like if I think about my house where they put the boiler, like I don't envy the person that would have to do repairs to any of the feeding elements to that boiler because they're in a very it's pinned up right up against the heating system.
Okay.
You know, so if they had to go in and repair it, it would be they'd either have to remove something or they'd have to be really tiny because it's like a really tight space. So there's, so that we call that constructability. So and also keeping in mind that constructability extends to the people who also have to maintain the space afterwards. So building things, not just because it fits in the physical space, but does it fit in the space in a way that is also easy to build?
Yeah.
And easy to maintain. So we use 3D models for that.
So when I do this at my house, right, it's one brain.
Yes.
I still screw it up, but at least the good news is I'm the idiot. We found him.
Yeah.
But in a building like that, is one architect designing the electrical, the HVAC, the fire suppression? Like, is one architect doing all of that, or how does that work in a building that large?
It's separate entities, and it depends based off of the nature of the contract is how the contractual relationships between who's doing that work. So typically it's housed under the architect. Okay. But then they will sub out certain aspects of that. So so typically in-house, like the architect is mostly trying to realize the intent of the owner. So they're thinking about things that are beyond just I would say the practical design of physical elements, because there we're also worried about, and this is where like the art of construction kind of comes in, which I think is interesting, is there's an aesthetic that the owner is going for. The building is typically interfacing with the community or with tenants or with students.
Like the
or
Bose
with
building built to look like the Bose speaker.
There you go.
Or the Apple building built to look like, I don't know, a donut or whatever it
Yeah,
was.
I mean, there's like a spaceship.
Supposed to look like is that what it is?
Or like a mothership kind of feeling. But yeah, I mean, there's and if you factor in other like materials like mass timber, which have like a very beautiful natural aesthetic to it. So timber is basically wood structural elements.
Do we still use wood?
When we're going back to it, like because it's a more sustainable material.
Okay,
so our company has a practice within our company where we have people who specialize in that, because there's supply chain and other implications to building with wood as opposed to building with steel. But but there's also there's a beauty and aesthetic that you get out of timber that you don't get from steel or precast concrete, like structural elements. So
can you build giant buildings like out of wood? Like I think about it for like trim and like the beauty of it. But like if I'm building like a skyscraper, can I use wood as part of the like structural, or how far can I get with that?
So I'd have to default to, so there's a gentleman by the name of Dean Lewis that works for us. So he would be able to tell you
that's fair.
The tolerances. So that's not my area of expertise, but I could point to some projects that we've built. So we did the Portland Airport, the terminal.
Okay.
Beautiful. I mean, you walk into that terminal, and you actually, if you go to our website and you pull up our annual report, we actually feature that airport terminal on the cover because it's so iconic, both in terms of its design and there's a grandness to it. Like you think about like the most iconic buildings in human history, there's some that jump to mind, like the pyramids, the Eiffel Tower. Like there's some that they serve the function, but there's also a beauty and an aesthetic to them where they leave the Acropolis. Like you can rattle off the Colosseum. You get the same feeling when you walk into that airport. Like there's like you look at it and you can't help but be inspired by, this is something that a human being designed and built. There's almost an impossibility to it in terms of structurally how it is able to stand up, because it almost has like it almost feels like you're standing in the ribs of a boat, I guess is the best way I could describe it. So like it has a very similar kind of aesthetic. So if you think about the structural elements of a boat and how it comes together, and like a large boat, like you think about like the galleons from like the age of exploration, or like a pirate ship, like that size boat I'm thinking about, not like a little rowboat, but like you walk in and you feel like you're in like the ribs of a boat, or like a whale or something like that, and it has a really unique and interesting aesthetic, but like beauty, but also structurally like it feels impossible but inspiring at the same time.
Okay, perfect. So then if you're on the YouTube, you'll be able to go see some of these images as Mike's talking about these. But that sounds really cool. Let me click into one other thing, though. As we're talking about wood, you mentioned it's more sustainable. And I was like, yeah, that makes sense. And then I'm like, wait, but aren't we supposed to not cut down the trees? So can you talk for a second about this? What makes wood different in sustainability in term versus steel?
Well, that's a great question. So there's a number of different levers that drive the sustainability conversation. So it's not just the sourcing of the materials itself, but also the environmental implications for even obtaining the materials. So embodied carbon is one metric that we use. So you would be surprised by how much carbon is embodied in the creation of steel and concrete.
Okay.
Compared to the harvesting of wood.
And is that what, like things like I have to melt the iron?
You need to melt that, and also the materials that go into it. So the amount of energy, heat, carbon that is just inherent to the nature of working in those materials.
Yeah,
we call that embodied carbon because it's literally embodied in the material. It's not, and sometimes literally. Because carbon is part of the process. So when you think about wood, yes, like we are very conscious to deforestation and concerns there. But as we move to a world of more electrical vehicles and electrification, so the equipment that we're using to harvest the wood, less of an environmental footprint.
Right.
The amount of carbon that is in transforming the wood into structural elements, less so than concrete and steel. And then if you think about circularity, the reuse of materials. So thinking about the notion of recycling a building or even modifying a building easier to conceive with wood
Oh yeah.
than with concrete or
Right.
with steel, if you think about it. So there's in terms of like the full life cycle of the building. So there's aspects of wood why mass timber has become kind of like a hot material right now, or it has kind of come back into, like, wood has come back into I would say popularity with many owners, is for these reasons, because there's like a full life cycle view of sustainability around wood that overcomes some of the limitations of working with steel and concrete.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think we think so much because we see the things that are happening in the Amazon or whatever. We kind of think of that as like how we harvest the wood. But in fact, in so many places now, we're replanting. There's a cycle,
Well, there's
right?
yeah.
Go ahead if you want to talk about that. But like,
No, I
I
wanted
think
to finish that thought,
that sustainability aspect of it actually is like the steel doesn't regrow,
Right.
but we have a setup where the trees regrow in a way that's really good and continuous kind of cycle for the environment.
Yeah, well, there's an opportunity there to responsibly source the wood in exactly the way you described. So making sure that when the places that we source the wood from is also, they have a replanting protocol, replenishment protocol. So
Right.
it's a like I said, there's a broader view.
Yeah.
Or opportunity, sustainability opportunity around mass timber.
And there's a whole other podcast on, there's some really cool stuff about like where they're now using some blockchain elements they verify that the GPS coordinates where they are harvesting the wood is a place they're able to harvest it.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
And then they add that to the blockchain, like, yes, this was certified. We got the GPS coordinates where we cut the trees down from. So then you can follow the wood through the blockchain and know that, yes, this timber mill got those trees. Yes, these boards are those trees and you can follow it all the way to the building construction, that yes, this building, you could actually go back and find the GPS coordinates of the trees that went into that building at the end of that. So another way technology is working with that sustainable aspect, which I think is a cool element to it all.
Yeah. Well, that's a good, I'm glad you brought up blockchain, because I think that's a good thing to revisit in terms of technology finding a place in terms of adoption.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like we've gone through these cycles where there's a lot of hype around technologies, and blockchain was one of those where it was going to revolutionize accounting and transactions and financial systems. And that we never realized that hype, but yet the technology itself found itself very much a place where it's important that you want to certify like the sourcing of materials and information, where the credibility of the information is absolutely paramount.
Right.
Like the security that blockchain provides, like it found itself like adoption in in places that you wouldn't have expected.
Yeah. Yeah. And we were talking about history, right? We found that for the web too, where the web came out with all these crazy, ridiculous ideas.
Yep.
And we weeded those out over time and ended up with really good ideas that really changed the way the world works today. But in the meanwhile, we had to get through a bunch of really ridiculous ideas on the web first.
Yeah.
So okay, back to on the construction thing, one of the things that you said was the sequencing. And is that sequencing of like the electrician gets to, or the electrician architect gets to go first, and then the HVAC has to figure out how to work around that? Or how do those things interact, and how does that, for all those pieces to get put together?
Yeah, so it's the sequencing in a physical space, but also the staging. So we think about it in terms of releasing work for the next crew or the next trade in sequence. So there's a natural progression to construction, like the foundational work obviously needs to be done before you can do the structural work.
Okay.
The structural work needs to be to a certain point before you can be thinking about fitting out a space. So I mean, there is a natural progression of things, but there's how much space, how much work, how far ahead in the sequence you get ahead for the person in front of you, which then allows the next crew to come in and start their work. So it's the minimum amount of work that's sequenced that allows the next crew. And there's a methodology around that called the last planner system and pull planning, which has actually its roots in manufacturing. So it's the application of lean manufacturing and lean thinking to the construction industry. So recognizing that a building doesn't come off of an assembly line.
Yeah.
And every building is unique.
Yep.
I mean, if you think about this space and think about how you fitted out this space. There's some common elements, right? There's going to be a kitchen. There's going to be partitions for cubicles. There's going to be utility rooms. Maybe there's a lobby. There's an elevator shaft. There's restrooms. I mean, all like the elements of a building, like an office building, are pretty predictable. But yet, where they sit physically in every building is unique. How they interact with other systems and components, even the level of technology over monitoring and managing the building in its entirety varies.
Right. Yeah.
From building to building. So in construction, while there are repeatable or predictable patterns, every project also is unique. So the idea of pull planning in the last planner system is sequencing the work to the extent that you can for the parts that truly are repeatable. And that tends to apply in work where there is a repeatable element to it. So think about something like a residential tower or a hotel where you have rooms or elements of it that arguably could come off of an assembly line because they're identical.
Right.
So while the site preparation and the structural work and some of the concrete pours and the things that happen initially might be unique to the site, you eventually get to a point where there's a repetitive nature of the work that actually does operate more like a factory.
Right.
So we use technology to help us find that balance. That's called basically the industrialization of construction is what we call it.
Okay.
Is finding the subcomponents or the sub-elements that you could repeat, operate more like a production schedule. And then when you get to that point, then it opens up the door for maybe even taking some of those components off site and building them in a more controlled environment like a factory.
Okay.
So think about this building again. If we were to take all the ceiling tiles off and we looked at all the MEP, if we did a good job of,
if we looked at the what?
All the mechanical, electrical, and plumbing. So all the
okay.
I'm sorry, I'm throwing acronyms at you.
No,
so if we were to look at those components, if we designed them and coordinated them well enough prior to construction, there's the opportunity to fabricate those things off site.
Yeah.
Have them delivered and install them like Lego pieces.
Almost like a prefab house.
Prefab, yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay. So modular and prefabrication.
What does that do to the time it takes to build a building?
So it reduces time reduction on site.
Yep. Is it significant?
I couldn't quote you numbers, but it's considerable enough where there's a business case.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay, that's fair.
So there's a business case for it.
Does that also come into play with cost then? If it's yeah,
because you're reducing things like material waste. So so think about any construction site, you're inevitably going to see a lot of material waste. Like one of the biggest impacts that construction has on the sustainability conversation is just the amount of materials that end up in dumpsters and landfills because of just the nature of trade work. So a lot, if you think about, I mean, again, I think the analogy of doing work on your house is, because there's unforeseen field conditions.
Yep.
Like you measure something wrong or you make a mistake or whatever, or maybe the volume of the material as you purchase it relative to what you need isn't always aligned. So there's inevitable waste to the construction process just to the way supply chains and all these things work. When you move all that to an industrialized environment, you're able to get better control over the amount of waste that you're producing and also the quality and the amount of rework and mistakes. So you're just delivering these components and then you install them, like I said, like Lego bricks. But that takes a lot to get that engine running.
Yeah.
Requires a lot of coordination up front. So it's the whole got to move slower to move faster paradigm. So if you're willing to make the investment up front in design, coordination, and planning, and that's where the 3D models become very valuable.
Yeah. Is there ever a case where you, like a hotel or whatever, like you said, you've got these hotel rooms and I've got 180 of them are all the same or whatever. Is there ever a case where you build another building, but you can use the same rooms?
So conceivably, yes. So again, because clients are the ones who drive projects.
Yep.
And they typically don't want to see a lot of repetition across their portfolio. They actually, variation is in many ways sometimes desired or preferred because they don't want cookie cutter. But if you think about some owners in their portfolio where repetition is desirable, so like things like medical office buildings. So some of the healthcare providers in just Boston Metro. If you think about the number of
Right.
of medical office buildings that are starting to pop up out in suburbs and outside of like the urban core center. So you've got the hospitals in the urban cores, and they're creating these satellites, and they're building them very rapidly and multiple at once. Reducing variation is actually desired in that case because you design it once and build it multiple times.
Okay. It also feels desirable to me as the consumer. I'm not the customer, right?
Yeah.
But like whatever, because I think about like if I walk in a Best Buy and every single Best Buy is different, I walk into a new one and I'm like, where the heck are TVs or whatever it is I'm looking for?
Yeah.
But I feel like there are other stores where they just cookie cutter build them, and I walk in and I'm like, I know exactly where the mixing bowls are and Bed Bath and Beyond or whatever. I don't know, right? Yeah. So it feels like there's some desirability to cookie cutter in certain industries, also to help your end customer across multiple sites or whatever.
Yep. I mean, you'll see that with fast food restaurants. Like there's design elements that are either part of their identity or even part of how they operate. Like, so if you think about like Chick-fil-A, all Chick-fil-A's have a very similar, because they've optimized their flow for the drive-through.
Right.
You go to any Chick-fil-A, they have a very similar flow to them.
Yeah.
And the buildings have a very similar kind of design to them as a result. So that's repeatable.
Yeah.
So somebody sat down and said, you know what, we're gonna standardize this, and then we're gonna optimize, basically for cost,
right,
across our entire portfolio, because it also simplifies then the maintenance of those things. So if every building in your portfolio has similar components and elements, then you can get to other economies of scale, like replacement parts. If you're doing maintenance on the same piece of equipment across your entire portfolio, much more cost effective than if you have a lot of variation in the portfolio. So things like that.
Jumping to some of the technology things, what's in the last 2-ish years some cool things that you've seen come in, and what are things maybe you think we'll see in the next 2 years? Maybe you've seen but aren't using yet, or what?
Yeah, so the two that I would say got adopted very rapidly were drones and 360 cameras.
And what?
360 cameras.
Oh, okay.
So cameras.
How are you using those?
Yeah, so I'll start with drones, and then I'll.
Yeah.
So drones allows us to get the eye in the sky imagery, and you could say, well, I can go to Google Maps.
Mm-hmm.
I asked this question of one of our superintendents, because it's fascinating to me, like someone who's a technologist, like even I, to an extent, am naive. I think the technology will work, or I think it solves a problem because the PowerPoint presentation was great and the demo was right. Like even me being in the industry, and we talked a little about this in like the pre-interview. Like we can revisit this, like the decision makers in terms of who's investing in the tech versus the people that actually have to use it.
Right.
So I get excited when the people in the field know more about the tech than I do, or they're the ones who are driving the adoption. And so drones is one of those technologies. Like we have people in the field lining up to get into our drone certification program. Like they come find us. Like we don't have to push it. Like I was actually very surprised how quickly it was adopted. So I asked one of our superintendents here in Boston, what is it that you like about the drone? What problem does it solve for you? And what he said is like, so we have Google Maps. I can get a satellite image of my site, but that image is a moment in time.
Right.
Now that image could have been last week. It could have been last month. It
2 years ago.
2 years ago, right? So for the purposes of wayfinding, which is what we all use it for, it's accurate enough.
Mm-hmm.
But construction is dynamic.
Right.
Site conditions are changing on an almost daily basis.
Yeah.
You have stakeholders that you want to communicate to in terms of progression from the owner side with your trade partners and your subs who are coming on the site, like basic things like coordinating deliveries, even the safety of the site itself, which is of extreme importance to our company and the industry, minimizing the opportunity for incidents that could put people's life in jeopardy.
Yeah.
All that is from having a real-time understanding of what's happening on the site. So the power of being able to put a drone up in the sky and just knowing what's happening on site very holistically from the bird's eye view, especially in some of that early phase work, is very powerful. So a technology that solved the problem. And it was interesting because there were other, it's funny, right? There's multiple technologies that often are trying to solve the same problem, and which one gets adopted. So there were some startups that had the idea that you stick a camera on a crane, right? Because a crane is mobilized on a job site and it's permanently in that bird's eye view.
Right.
But the crane isn't always mobilized in like the early phases of construction when maybe the site images from the higher elevation would be most valuable. So so the drone, the barrier to entry in terms of learning how to operate the drone is actually very low. If you know how to play a video game or work with the game controller, you can like in short order.
So today they're not autonomous. Today somebody's flying the drone.
Well, yes, yeah, they're not autonomous yet, but that is coming. I'm glad you went there because now the value of the imagery is such that we want to increase our ability and capacity to capture more.
Yep.
So that's where autonomous drones would come in, is because then I don't have to worry about someone physically flying the drone. I can program it, and if I trust that the technology will keep it within safety parameters and fly the mission the way I need it to fly,
Right.
it makes all the sense in the world. So
okay, can I geek out for a second?
yeah, sure.
So one of the things we look at is things like radar map changes or LiDAR map changes or those kinds of things. So are you doing anything today where you would like run the drone and then run the drone tomorrow and it shows you what changed from its map yesterday? So it can so you could see what was built today or like a new hazard that showed up or whatever. Like, is any of that happening today?
Yes, it is. And this is where like the AI comes into the conversation. So you're basically comparing an image today to an image tomorrow. So you're looking for patterns.
Yep.
Patterns of things that are indicative of something.
Yeah.
Those patterns could be the movement of materials. It could be the delivery of materials on site. It could be a safety incident. It could be just a progression of work itself. Like there's a myriad of things where progression over time, comparing an image today to an image tomorrow is an application.
It's cool. Marketing probably wants that, where you can do like a stop motion video of this entire building being built over a couple of years or whatever.
Oh, yeah, we've done that. Yeah. So,
very cool.
Yeah. So like the stop motion, like progression over time.
Yeah.
Which is always cool to see. Even the fly throughs, like just the fly throughs of just capturing our crews, can be very like inspirational just to see people. Like I think there's just something inherently cool about the vibrancy of a construction site and just seeing people engaging in the process of construction. Like that's just it's like a very inspirational thing to capture. It's like people working with their hands. Like there's a cool. I don't know. I think there's a coolness, and there's just heavy equipment operating, and like there's just a coolness to the energy of a job site that you can get the drone flyovers. But then plus you must have, I'm thinking like, oh yeah, that'd be so cool to see of like our building. Like it would be cool to see. But then I realized I'm like, oh, when I want to hang something on the wall, I'd actually be going back to like, can I see where the drone was in this room? And if there's an electrical conduit coming down through here or whatever, but you would end up having like, in case, not that this would ever happen, but in case someone put it somewhere different than it was in the plans, you would have the drone imagery of that part of the building or whatever that you could go back and refer to later. Yes. So drones for that, or that's where 360 photography comes into. Okay. That's more, although you can fly a drone indoors, it's like 360 photography is more good for indoor progression over time images where the drone is, although now there's platforms that stitch the two together. So now you're getting the outdoor overhead and then you're getting the in-room 360. In one platform, but the use case you just described is a perfect example, right? So what was behind the walls? Yeah. And was it installed? Like, so you could do a QAQC check. Do you catch it before the wall goes up? And then if it's critical to then correct it, you can. Right. But then also triaging things later, it's helpful to see who was in a space, what they did, where they installed it, so you're not having to tear down an entire wall, let's say, because you know exactly where the pipe or the whatever is that you're trying to get to triage a problem that has emerged. So so a lot of power, just image capture. Yeah. On site. Yeah.
Boy, it could probably help with your vendors, like knowing which subs are amazing and which ones were problematic.
Yeah. Yeah. So these are like all the little, so if you think about it like a river and then its tributaries. Yeah. Like I think about there's core technologies that have found their place in construction because they are the rivers. Right. And then what I think is fascinating is then the tributaries that tie into those core technologies. So an example of that is, so now that we have the capability for drones, for the overhead image capture and the flyovers, Some of the other applications are things like building inspections for thermography. So is the building tight in terms of heat and insulation? Like are there imperfections in the installation of things at high elevations that are impossible to verify by putting a human on a crane, or is unsafe to put a human on a scaffold at that level of elevation? So
You guys don't use the drones to get pictures of 28 guys on the top beam on the building just hanging out with no safety harnesses at all?
no, we'll get that at top off. Like that's actually well, it's funny you say that, right? Because top off is like when they finish the erection of steel on a job site. That's like a huge milestone. Like typically it's celebrated on a job site, and it's the same idea. Like that iconic picture of the
Because you see all those old pictures of like 30 guys on a steel beam 1,000,000 feet in the air with nothing attached to them or whatever.
Yeah.
So they still do that?
Oh yeah, so that's like like I said, it's a critical milestone. Now they're all hopefully like at least on Skanska job sites, they're all like tied in.
Now they have a harness.
Harnessed and make sure safety is obviously at that elevate. And anytime you're working in steel, but same idea. Like it's cool to capture people at a high elevation, like in the accomplishment of. I mean, it is. It's a huge. Every building. Because every building has a personality. Like no matter how many times you see that, it's always exciting because like one, it's a critical milestone, and two, it's like a monument to engineering. It's like a feat. Every building is like a feat of engineering. So it's like it's cool to capture that moment. Anyway, so
no, that's really cool. It feels to the outside world like somebody's gonna comment. Speak for yourself, but like. The construction will be very slow to adopt these things, and it sounds like there's a lot of cool stuff in there. How do you see that? Like, is it taking longer than it should to adopt some of these technologies, or are they coming along, or why is that one way or the other?
So it's a mix of all the above.
Yeah. Okay.
So the technologies, like I said, the technologies that solve a problem are rapidly adopted. Drones, 360 cameras. I mean, I would say even 3D models to an extent. I mean, when the barrier to entry of the technology is low, and it's solving a problem that is embraced in the field, rapid adoption, typically.
Okay.
So there's like in those cases where those stars align, you see rapid adoption. Where we see disconnects, I would say, is in a couple of scenarios. And this is what I deal with in my role. I would say these are like the more frustrating sides of my role and the nature of working, trying to drive technology adoption in construction. So the first is with the established players, the established cloud vendors. There was a time when the people on the other side of the fence came from construction, so there was an understanding in terms of dialogue. Like you could get very close to the product teams, and you could shape the product in a way that was reflective of what was needed in the field. So there was an intimacy within the industry between the people on the GC or the construction side who were trying to drive change and the people who were building the tools. Yeah. And because there was that intimacy and closeness, and it was a very small community, you felt that you could shape the products in a way, and the pricing models and all those things was reflective of how we use the tool. So there was a good alignment. Yeah. I would say as the cloud has become more prevalent and those established players have gotten bigger and bigger and bigger, and they've acquired other tools. So as they've acquired startups and brought them into the fold, what inevitably ends up happening is you start dealing with customer success people, which is the model that every large cloud provider eventually gravitates to. Is they get so successful that they can't be as responsive. Their product teams can't be as responsive to all the customers because they have product to build, and we understand that, right? So, but you've put these layers of people who they're not construction people typically. They're not product people typically, so they're not technical, nor are they industry. They're customer success people, which typically come from more sales-y kind of background. So you've created these layers of people that are basically in a swivel chair. Yeah. You've
gotten yourself away from the customer.
Yeah, they've created. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I'm a long-winded way for me to say they've created distance with the customer. Yeah. The vendors who know how to bridge that gap and partner with us, not so much of an issue as the ones who have gotten so big that they can't get out of their own way. So
Yeah.
so there's an inefficiency, I think, in just the nature of cloud. And I think and we can revisit this later, I think AI is going to shift the pendulum back where companies are actually going to start building their own software again, because while the cloud wouldn't exist if there wasn't a business model. But I kind of lived that whole journey. Like, I started my career in Boeing building software.
Mm-hmm.
I was part of the change management effort to move all that to the cloud, and by extension to external vendors. I think the pendulum's going to come back where people are going to want to, but we can revisit that. But that's the first problem is dealing with companies that you want to be partners, but who act like vendors. And you lose that intimacy with the product. So I would say that's the first challenge. The second challenge then is on the other end of the spectrum with the startups. So now that the VC model has gravitated to,
we figured out there's money in this.
There's money in this. The culture of VCs in Silicon Valley is out of alignment with construction. So their incentive is to, like, they all dream of being the unicorn, right? The unicorn IPO or acquisition. Right. So with that comes rapid, aggressive sales and adoption. So they are in a very aggressive sales. So they will have sometimes in many cases, minimally viable products, but very aggressive sales.
Okay.
So they try
better at sales than product.
Yes, like more. They're very savvy. At sales. So they will get in the door, but they want to move at their pace and not ours. So what they don't understand is that in construction, to deliver value, you have to deliver value on a project, and projects move very slow. And just because you've established value on one project doesn't mean that we're necessarily going to universally adopt it at enterprise scale across every project, across our whole company. The change management process in construction is slow, not because we're averse to technology and change, but just because change management, like, we're not a move fast and break things industry. Like, the implications of that, like,
that's bad with a 50-story building.
Yes, and we're a low margins business, and our business is in managing risk. So bringing in something that's unproven, that's wanted to move very rapidly, someone's going to eat that risk, and the transaction is at the project level. So the startups we find is that they just want to move at a different pace than us.
It's interesting because if you read like the Marty Kagan stuff where customer, like, just understand what your customer wants, have these conversations with your customer. Yeah. But it's an interesting thing because the Silicon Valley startup culture, it sounds like, is at odds with the culture necessary to build safe buildings.
Yeah, to an extent. I mean, because and I think it's interesting. And then you said, like, some of the perceptions out there. I think the whole model of disruption is that you sometimes ignore what's in place because it's inherently flawed, and so we're gonna ignore the way things are done because we're trying to disrupt.
Yeah,
which means we're going to either tear apart and rebuild in our own image, or we're going to try to boldly go. And now I will say some of that energy is welcome.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
Like, our industry in many ways was stagnant, which is why we're ripe for disruption. So we have not, and that's what makes it exciting. Construction has not gone through the transformational change that manufacturing went through at the dawn of industrialization. Because if you think about manufacturing used to be a craft industry as well, but it went through a transformation. Construction hasn't had that transformational moment. So I welcome the energy.
That's interesting.
Of the VCs and the startups, because I think we need to challenge how we do certain things. But it has to be at our pace. And to conclude this thought, the startups that are willing to partner with us, so get their boots dirty, come out to the field, make genuine connections, and genuinely want to solve the problems from the field because they understand, and demonstrate an understanding. Like, credibility is a huge part of construction. For the startups that are willing to do that and meet us in the middle, highly successful.
Yeah.
The ones that come at us with an attitude that they know better, they're smarter, you're
that's
cavemen.
Prevalent in this world.
Yeah, like your knuckle draggers, blah blah blah.
Right.
They just fundamentally don't understand construction. So you could try to disrupt us.
Yeah.
And maybe you'll be successful, but there's like those second and third order effects.
If you think you're smarter than your customer, probably not.
Well, yeah. So that's
So
we see a little bit of that.
Oh, that's interesting. So I think that relates back perfectly to space.
Yeah.
So the space program, NASA, these kinds of things have the same kind of thing. Like we can't just have the building fall down because you wanted to try something.
Right.
And so NASA says, well, this is the way we did it in the 60s.
Yep.
So this is how we'll do it again. It misses out on the new technology thing.
Yes.
And so there's this balance between the two sides of all the things the compute on your phone, probably the compute on your watch is way, way more than we had on the initial space missions that landed on the moon. And yet there's an element of we don't want to change it from that because it worked.
Yep.
And there are people on this rocket and we would like them not to die.
Yep.
But on the other hand, maybe you could go ahead and use a little more compute than even is on my watch today on this thing. And then you see SpaceX come in, and it turns out the industry was too stagnant for too long, and somebody was able to disrupt the whole thing, thinking a different way and coming up with a way to move fast and break things that weren't going in testing so that we can move to a safer when we get to the final thing, which feels like it's a good analog of buildings. Like we can't move fast and break things while we build the building.
Yes.
But if we do that in test, or we do that in parts of the building where we can redo it or iterate or whatever, so that the final thing that we have standing is going to be the safe, reliable, easy to update thing, then it feels like the right place and a great place for that disruption. And in this case, I almost don't like the word disruption.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah.
Right? Because we want to create something that's so amazing it's disruptive. Okay, great. But really, it's just coming up with better ways, faster ways, cheaper ways that increase safety and make it cheaper and all those kinds of things. So I'm fascinated on so many levels because there's also this VC element of you want to push fast, and there's a point at which you go, the startup's over, like it's not working.
Yep.
And I wonder how often in the building industry that happens before one project is finished.
Well, quite often. I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And maybe the product was amazing, and you as a customer might have tweaks to it that make it exactly what the industry needs, but maybe the culture and premise of the company and its funding inherently couldn't survive long enough to get to that win.
Yeah. But the flip side to that is if you get too comfortable in the way you operate, you also run the risk of being obsolete. So I think if you think about like just human evolution, right? Disruption and environmental change is inevitable, right? So being a naysayer and holding it at arm's distance isn't the right answer, right? So you have to embrace disruption, because disruption can sometimes lead to evolution. But I'm more interested in learning from the mistakes of when adoptions don't work, and then building on the scar tissue to get to actual true adoption and implementation. So going back to like your space analogy, like how do we get to the moon? It's great to have the aspiration, the moonshot or the Mars shot, right? So you need to have the vision of a better future.
Yeah.
And you need people who live in that headspace. But then there's the practical engineering of building to that outcome and how you get there. So it's one is like, can we even break Earth atmosphere and get into orbit unmanned?
Right.
Then once you've figured that problem out, can you get to orbit manned and actually get an astronaut into space and back safely? And then once you get there, maybe then how do you get to the moon? So it's like it's building, right? And with
there was a whole process.
Every iteration. So I'm interested in getting back to a world, because I think so. And this is like a different maybe narrative thread. So, and it ties again more to like my military background is like there's a lot of people that have said that command and control is dead. Like the command and control organizations that emerged after World War II that largely mimicked the military structures, because a lot of people were veterans and found its way into corporate America, that moving to a flatter, more nimble organizational structure enables innovation. And that was largely driven by Silicon Valley as like a counter to command and control. And while I agree that decentralization and flatter organizations are more nimble in terms of innovation, the implementation still needs a more methodical, more engineering mindset, like that whole continuous improvement of the plan, do, the Deming cycle, the plan, do, check, act. Everyone can plan, really easy to execute, very hard to actually assess if something was successful, and then even harder to make adjustments if something is not working. So to me, I appreciate the energy of people that are trying to disrupt and have the vision for the future.
Yeah.
Like help us see a moon landing. Help us conceive a world where we're colonizing Mars. Like, it's important to have that energy in the industry, but there's also a practicality of that's not going to happen overnight, and you need the discipline of sometimes go slower to speed up.
Yeah.
I'm more interested in building that adoption in the field of the tools. And sometimes it's not the shiny object. It doesn't have to always be sexy.
Right.
But when you see adoption and people embracing new ways of working, you can build from there. But coming at the conversation, telling people that they don't understand, or like this narrative that construction is resistance to change. It's just change management is a different animal in our industry because of the nature. And if you're willing to partner with us, there's huge opportunity. So I guess is where I'd tie that all. So.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. And for me, this whole conversation, so much of it is about the culture clash in those things. And I think that's really interesting. There's one we've run into there's this program the government has called STTR. And the idea is they're innovative research contracts or grants where a university and a company have to work together in order to get it. And at first I was like, why is that a thing? And then after we did some, I realized how hard it is for universities and companies to work together. Because companies ultimately are driven by profit. I don't think you need to be a jerk to do that. And some folks, they don't care. They'll gladly be a jerk and do that. I don't think you need to do that. I think you can take care of your stakeholders, your employees, your vendors, your customers, all of those things, and still have profit, one of the things in that equation. But it's still one of the main things in that equation. On the academic side, it's more recognition. And, did they get the patent for this? And they're not necessarily going to make much money on the patent for it. They just want to have the patent and recognize that they got it and their school has it and whatever. So we don't understand what the other guy's saying. Or like, universities like, well, you don't want recognition for this? Like, no, you can have the recognition. Like, I think you're lying to me. No, we don't care. We just want to make money on it. You don't want to make money on it? No, I just want to. And that kind of cultural, I don't mean clash in like we don't like each other or something, but just we have a strong culture at our company for a thing in a direction. It's a different one at university. And so that's it. And those are the things that are harder problems to solve than just, we just need the technology. So that's a fascinating thing I'm taking away from this conversation. But could we get back to the part where you hate ChatGPT?
Yeah, we can talk about that. So not hate, but I think it derailed the AI and the data conversation to an extent. It created a distraction. So what I mean by that is, for those of us who have been in the data game since the inception of digitalization, companies from the early 2000s recognized that there was value in their data sets. As we continue to build this accumulating repository of digital knowledge and information and data, there's value in that data, and that the aspiration has always been to get to prescriptive and predictive analytics and maybe even artificial intelligence. To an extent, automate like true AI driven automation and things like that. So that's always been the aspiration, and the underlying technologies have been there. So like large language models and machine learning and computer vision, like these technologies existed before ChatGPT. Just very few people were actually talking about them. I had a conversation with the CEO of a startup that I'm very close with, and I asked them, it's funny, before ChatGPT you were reluctant to say you were doing AI, and now post ChatGPT you have to almost oversell that you're doing AI. So it's like the underlying technology was there. ChatGPT was an inevitable, was a leap forward. So now we've reached a point where the underlying technology is allowing us to process the information at unprecedented levels and get to insights that we couldn't do before. But I also think like the genius of ChatGPT was that they rendered the technology with a very simple interface. So think about the first time when you first started hearing about ChatGPT, and the first time you went into, the first time I went into it, there was a coolness factor to typing a query into a very simple text entry.
Yep.
And the response was shockingly conversational and almost human.
Yep.
And it gives the facade of there being intelligence behind the response. Now, like, what you don't know is that there's processors, doing probability and statistics and mathematical computations at like ridiculous levels over vast volumes of data to achieve that facade. But I can't ignore the fact that was much like smartphones, much like the cloud.
Yeah.
We've taken a leap forward.
Yeah.
But we've also created a toy that I think has created a distraction because what I mean by that is ChatGPT is I almost see it as fast food. It's where it's creating a lot of high calorie but low nutritional value content that's flooding all of our systems.
Yeah.
So I'll give you a couple of examples of that. So like on Instagram now, like everyone's doing there's these trends like render my pet as a human, I fall big. Yeah. I'm guilty of these. So they're fun, right?
We did a me as an action figure.
Yeah, you as an action figure, right? So you get a lot of like this noise of like everyone using, and it's like like the amount of computational power. Like this is the peak of human civilization. Like these, like we're creating memes. We've peaked that we're creating memes, right? So which are fun, right? They're fun, but you see a lot of that. But then I go to LinkedIn.
Yeah,
and I like LinkedIn to me is a platform for connecting with other knowledge experts and thought leaders in the industry. And what you're starting to see is the volume of content is increasing. So the number of people, so if you think about the time it takes to write a knowledge article. So if someone is taking the time to sit down and write an article and share that knowledge to LinkedIn, there's a credibility to it and a passion behind it, right? They've taken they've almost the barrier to entry of producing that content gives the content some merit.
Yeah.
So now we've reduced the barrier to entry because I can prompt a large language model, ChatGPT or Copilot or one of the others, write me, like I can prompt it to write an article, a knowledge article, and it's deriving that article from content that's available to it. Some of it maybe should be copyrighted, others not, but it doesn't matter because now it's aggregating this information. So now I'm able to create content on LinkedIn that maybe I wouldn't have written before because of the ease of ChatGPT. So now I'm posting articles that I'm as a knowledge expert or a thought leader. That's really just it's ChatGPT. It's AI creating it. It's not me. It's the AI. I'm prompting it, but it's creating it. And I read an article on LinkedIn that gave me pause of somebody who was like this podcast. Somebody was celebrating a world where with AI, conceivably in the future, you and I could be having this podcast, but it's not you. And it's not me physically in the room. It is an AI rendition of us that we have conditioned to replicate us, that will answer the questions as if we were sitting in the room.
Right.
But it's not us in the room because this was a time commitment, right? I had to drive here. I'm sitting in a studio. I have to get home. So there's hours of productivity I've lost to spend time with you to have this conversation. So wouldn't it be great if an AI version of me that looks like me, sounds like me, my own mother wouldn't even, if she was watching the video, wouldn't know it wasn't me, so that I can go do something else. So now we're increasing the ability of me through AI to create content.
Yeah, and I feel guilty having not told you this before now.
But you are actually AI?
I'm an AI.
Oh, you're an AI. Okay, well, that's what I'm talking about, right? So it's like, and I didn't even know. So there's, so now we're flooding the airwaves with content that wouldn't be created. But now, as a consumer of that content, I don't have the time to consume all of this content because now the volume increases and it's
and it feels like it's thinner.
Yeah, thinner is a better word. I was gonna say mediocre, but thinner.
Yeah.
And so now I need a large language model or AI to now consume and digest this information. So it's like, so where's the value? So we're increasing, distill it back down. So we're increasing the volume. What's the problem we've solved? So like that's why I say like I think Chat GPT created an urgency and like we were on a path.
Yeah.
And some of these technologies would have found value-added places, but now we're trying to monetize a technology that's trying to. It's like much like we talked about this, right? Every technology has gone through this. The .coms.
Yeah.
Like, did we need pets.com? Right? Like there was like, and not everything's going to be e-commerce. I mean, we think about when e-commerce first started. Oh, that's going to be the death of brick and mortar stores. But yeah, we still have them. Yep. When Kindles came out, we're never gonna like that's the end of books, but yet there's still libraries, and my kids even they're digital natives. Yeah. They prefer the tactile feel of books. So so AI is gonna go through the same. But I feel like OpenAI created a moment and a buzz and a hype.
Yeah.
And then I think it maybe in some ways it accelerated in a good way, but also created a distraction, if that makes sense.
In a sense, it added a little bit of there's sort of an analog of the same thing in the space in general, where not just the content is a little thinner, but now more people know about AI. So that's good. And are, I think, excited about AI. But I think a lower percentage of those people understand it. And so one example we've run into is we started Simage, this synthetic data company, where we're creating synthetic data to help people who are training models that are running out of data or can't get data for that thing or what have you. So we synthesize that data. And so I'll often talk about it on some of the short form video stuff that we do. And it's usually computer vision algorithms, so images and video stuff that we're doing. Could be data record stuff, financial records and medical records or whatever for people that don't exist. We're not spreading anybody else's information around. This is all synthesized. And that's one of the benefits. There's no PII. There's no real person. So what we're seeing is I talk on these videos about the synthetic data we're making for machine learning models. Is they say, oh my gosh, these LLMs hallucinate enough. Like the last thing we need is you making up fake data. I'm like, it has nothing to do with the LLMs. And people don't realize there's machine learning that is not ChatGPT. They don't understand that there's time series data that is what we started machine learning on. And just for those listening, time series data would be things like in the buildings that we're talking about, if you monitor the temperature of a spot over time, or maybe you monitor the moisture, humidity, or whatever you call that in concrete over time. So you could tell how it's drying and how the concrete is curing. You measure that over time. That's what we call time series data. And so we feed that into a machine learning model, and the model will bring us back things like, oh, over time I've learned from all these different data points that you've given me, the concrete cracks when it dries faster than X. And so then we, the humans, end up going like, oh, let's make sure the temperature never exceeds this, or the humidity is this while we cure concrete, or it's never more than this thickness, so we can make adjustments and make things work better. There's all kinds of machine learning models out there that do these kinds of things. And then there's like computer vision based machine learning models. There's so much stuff that, you guys are using in all of your buildings and all that stuff has nothing to do with an LLM. So to your point about ChatGPT is like, it's good that people know about it, but also there's this like ugly underside of like, then everyone thinks that an LLM is the only form of machine learning today.
It's a silver bullet that solves for all problems. So although I will say, what was interesting about the journey for our company was we had made a pretty significant investment in data before ChatGPT hit the scene. So when it did hit the scene, we largely took it in stride. Like we as a company, there wasn't a panicked response because we had people that had data science backgrounds. We had already made the investment in a data lake, and we understood the importance of cleansing some of our data, overcoming some of the low-hanging fruit problem, like basic things like universal keys that allow you to correlate different databases together, like what's those secret decoder rings or the hooks that allow you to kind of correlate data across different systems that are talking about the same thing or to create patterns of data. So like we were already on that journey before the large, like the ChatGPT kind of world hit us. So when it did, we were able to take it in stride. And as a result, like we have some copilots that are specific to very specific use cases. So we're training it around very specific data sets to solve very specific problems. And the people who are querying that data also know what to ask of the data. So they're the same people that would have queried or tried to create a Power BI dashboard. Like they understand what they're trying to visualize. Like in their mind, they understand the questions they need to ask. So you've just changed the interface. So instead of now needing an IT person to do like a SQL query of the data to pull to create a visualization, it's now they're just using these copilots to do the same thing. And like so now we're spending a lot of time training people on how to think through how you query data. Yeah. And we're actually having a lot of success. Like I would say, like despite my skepticism and my comment around ChatGPT as a moment.
Sure.
Some of these tools I actually find the ones that are purpose built to solve very specific problems, I find very helpful.
Yeah.
And then I would also say in instances where I would benefit from a digital assistant, but I wouldn't be able to hire a person for that job anyway. Mm-hmm. It's freeing up cycles. So like an example of that is like earlier in my career, when I was an individual contributor, I became very fluent in building in Excel, and I knew how to be able to code in Excel. And I understood the syntax and all the things that go with coding. I knew how to, and why is it escaping me the name of the coding language in Excel? I spent so much time.
Visual Basic?
Yeah, Visual Basic. Yeah, sorry. The syntax of Visual Basic, I understood. I didn't have to reference something because I was in it every day. Fast forward to where I am today, I'm in Power BI, but not as frequently, but it's a different syntax. And there's different syntax depending on whether you're on the front end or the back end sometimes in terms of querying the data. But I'm still having to build some of the dashboards and things for myself because like the IT team and our data team just doesn't have the bandwidth to build everything that the business needs. So in many ways you want to democratize it and allow people like me to build what they need for themselves. But there's also a little bit of a barrier in terms of fluency because you're not in it every day, like much like a foreign language. Yeah. So like what I will use ChatGPT for or Copilot quite often is I know what I'm trying to do. Hey, I'm trying to write a query in Power BI. Here are the conditions. Here's the sequence in terms of the logic. Give me 4 examples in the appropriate syntax. And in a matter of seconds, I'm up and running. And and the syntax is correct and I can verify it because I put it into my data model and it works. If I think about 10 years ago how I had to do that with Visual Basic, very few people had that expertise, which means I typically was going to a Microsoft community board.
Yep.
I would ask the question, here's what I'm trying to, same thing, here's what I'm trying to do. Help me find the syntax. If someone was paying attention or was nice enough to respond, maybe a day later, if I'm lucky, typically a week or more. So there was that delay in terms of productivity and also not necessarily the right answer either.
Right.
So like I'm finding like Copilot is very good for that type of stuff where it's like there's not a human whose job I'm replacing, but there's the knowledge is not differentiating and it's public knowledge.
It just makes you more productive.
It just makes me more. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I like those use cases. I find those to be very helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. I find the same thing. Like I haven't touched this tech in a while. I'm immediately an expert again. Yeah. Just because I can immediately ask the exact question, or the other way I'll say it is a lot of times you can have the LLMs are basically a tutorial or a documentation on exactly the thing you're doing.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's
right. Yeah. Mike, this was awesome. I love this conversation. I learned so much about construction and what's going on with it. And I'm sure our listeners will too. So this was so useful, and I love the things that we dove into. Can you tell people how do they find you, or if they'd like to build a building that is built with modern tools, how do they get in contact with your company and that kind of thing?
Well, we have a company website, so I'm in Skanska.com. You can find me on LinkedIn or just email me directly. It's my first name last name at Skanska.com. So that's I'm pretty easy.
Okay, awesome. Perfect. Well, hey, thanks for joining us on this. This was awesome. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. It was fun.
I learned a ton, and it was a lot of fun. Okay, welcome to the Après podcast.
Mhm.
And I'm joined by Harriet, who has a slew of questions.
I do, and I guess welcome back. That was a great episode, and I took a lot out of it. So I have a lot of questions to ask you,
Yeah, that's for
and
sure.
I'll go
That I know.
yeah, I'll touch on a little bit of stuff, right?
Let's do it.
So I'm
What do
waiting
you
for
got?
your answers. The first one is, I gotta say, you were alive during COVID, right?
That's true. It's hard to argue that.
Yeah, I feel like you were alive during COVID. I was alive during COVID. Yeah. And the thing that I got why are you laughing?
I was alive during COVID. Yes,
I
you
was.
were. Yes, I can.
I was. I survived it. And you know
You
what's
did.
crazy?
I can also
Yeah,
attest to that.
true. But you know what's crazy? I want to say something that's crazy, right? Can I go ahead and say that? I think what's crazy is I never thought about it deeply how fast technology changed during COVID. And
Yeah.
now I'm like thinking about it. I'm thinking, was it already changing and we just didn't see it? Or did COVID like make it change faster?
Yes. For sure, it was already changing.
Okay.
So in our own business, right, we do a lot of robotics consulting. We help teams who are building a robot build their robot more reliably or faster or bring expertise to them to do it, this kind of thing. So we were doing a lot of robotics before COVID.
Yeah.
The and during COVID, all of a sudden robotics exploded. So
Yeah.
the world kind of knows about the video conferencing explosion, right? Zoom
Mm-hmm.
did a 7x in the first few months of COVID, like from say January, February of
Mm-hmm.
2020
Mm-hmm.
through November,
Mm-hmm.
they grew their stock price grew 7x
Yeah.
just because so many people were all of a sudden using video communications. And we've continued with that. And I think that's one that people are pretty familiar with. If you were alive before COVID
Mm-hmm. As
and
we all were.
used video calls before that, you
Mm-hmm.
realize how different that is, how much more we were in person before it and how much we'll use Zoom now, and even Zoom instead of a phone call. Maybe before we would have done a phone call, we're all so accustomed to Zoom now, or Teams, or whatever people are using, that we do that very regularly. But what we saw was that happen in robotics, which was sort of behind the scenes. People aren't thinking about how they get their packages delivered necessarily.
Yeah.
But if you think about what happened to package delivery, it went from a week or so
Right.
before COVID
Mm-hmm.
to now I can have stuff arrive later today. I can have stuff arrive tomorrow morning. Now, you couldn't just go online and buy stuff and have it arrive in the morning. But we've moved so much of that to robotics. And that really was a result of a lot of the warehouse and manufacturing companies going,
Mm-hmm.
wait, the robots don't get the COVID?
Oh.
Because workers weren't showing up or were getting sick and weren't able to show
Yeah.
up
Uh-huh.
or weren't allowed to show up because of these mandates.
Mm-hmm.
And so stuff wasn't getting manufactured, and whatever it was, medical equipment or whatever, it might just not happen. It's not getting shipped. It's not getting created. And so all of a sudden, they had already been implementing robotics. We were doing a lot of work in robotics ahead of 2020,
Mm-hmm.
but it just shifted and ramped up and grew a ton through 2020, 2021, even 2022.
Yeah, that's so interesting because when you were saying that, I was thinking about what Mike said. I was thinking about how you asked Mike, like, hey, construction, I would have thought was slow to adapt to things. How come it's not? And he said, and I think this was my favorite thing that he said in there, that technology that solves problems was embraced. And now you're saying the manufacturing warehouse realized people were getting sick, but robots weren't getting sick. And so they adapted that quickly. So now it's opening my eyes to like, why do you think that? Why do you think people are willing? Why do you think we're embracing Can you tell us why we're embracing that right now? We're embracing technology when it's solving our problems.
Well, they say necessity is the mother of invention.
Hmm.
And I like the add-on to that. And therefore, discontent is the father of progress.
Mm,
But in COVID, we experienced necessity.
yeah.
So again, in our business, we do a ton of simulation. We do simulation, emulation, digital twins, these kinds of things. And we've done these for a long time. Sometimes we work on multi-million-dollar robot systems. And for reasons I don't understand, our client won't ship us 6 of them to work on. You might come up with some reasons why they might not do that. And so we have to build a simulator to work on the robot because it's not practical for us to always have
Yeah.
our hands on that robot, or to be in the warehouse when we have to test the robot in the warehouse. And so that it wasn't practical, made sense to do simulation a lot. During COVID, it wasn't possible. And that
Mm,
impossibility pushed people where before they would have been like, let's just send a guy and make him go to the warehouse and take pictures or whatever it was that we could do manually. We
mhm.
might want to automate it, but we could do it manually. So we did. COVID, and I can't do it manually. I can't get someone there. I can't test my robot there. I can't be there, whatever it was.
Mhm.
And so we had to simulate everything. We had to adopt more computer vision and let the robots do things more autonomously. So it was a necessity thing during COVID. And then I think that sort of sparked folks that were in construction who might not wake up every morning when they're about to pour concrete and be like, I wonder if I could simulate pouring concrete. Like, why would you? But if
Right.
you can't get to the building and do it,
You
then you start going,
wanna
what is everything I could do so that when I get there,
you're like getting it done quickly.
right, when this mandate passes, whatever it was, and I get to the building or I get to the construction site, how do I get this building to go up and not pause to think about things or not pause because we're waiting on something? So how do I get all that automation in place ahead of time? And now that we can do both, now we can be at the building site, but
Mhm.
now we built this automation so we can run with both of those things together. Now we have a lot more of that tech. We're thinking in that way.
Yeah.
So I think it was a spark for us in a lot of ways, that much like Zoom replacing telephone calls,
Yeah.
really it necessitated, or of necessity, it replaced in-person communication.
Mhm.
We got used to it enough that now what used to be a phone call with
Yeah.
no visual, now we're way more likely to have visual there and at least be able to pick up some body language from people and those kinds of things. So I think it did continue from there.
Yeah, no, so that's super interesting. I had one other question that I thought was super interesting, and it was the VC topic when he brought in the VC and product. He was saying, right, that in their industry, like most of the time when you're making a product, they have a form of partnership and intimacy with each other where they're learning about what the construction workers need and making a product around that. And he said the VCs are different. They're more break things fast and run, right? So it's kind of causing a disalignment with the construction workers. So I was wondering, like, how do those two people work together and create something that kind of bridges that gap? Because I was really interested. I don't think I was able to find the answer for that.
I don't think the industry has the answer for it, because there is a misalignment. It's a good word for it. If you think about how construction moves, it moves slowly, and government does the same thing.
Right,
Government
right,
moves very
yeah.
slowly.
Mm-hmm.
And why do VCs want things to move fast? Because they need a return on their money. And if I said, I can double your money,
Mm-hmm.
you said, hey, that's great, I'll give you the money. And take it. And then 50 years, I come back later and I go,
Yeah.
here's double your money. I could have put this in the bank and quadrupled it in 50
Mm.
years. What are you doing? If I
Mm-hmm.
say I can double your money and I come back in 3 months, you're pumped. So VCs, that return time is a big element to that.
Mm-hmm.
So if they can take their money and put it into an AI startup that's not investing in construction, and they can grow crazy
Yeah.
and crazy fast, that
Right.
returns more money to the investors. So there is a problem here, because on the other side, if as a construction agency, you're saying, listen, you need to come in and learn from me.
Yeah.
And in 2 years, you'll be able to build a product.
Mm-hmm.
Well, how do I eat for 2 years?
Right.
Well, I try to build this product that's going to be just what they need. And so government work is the same way. It's like, yeah, send proposals for 2 years and get no money. And then maybe at the end of that, there will be an interesting project, and then maybe we'll grow disinterested and go do something else. And so it either people need to just have a passion for it. People came out of the construction industry and they're like, I am fixing this problem.
Uh-huh.
And I think that's why VCs talk so much about those are the people they want to invest in.
Yeah.
Because no matter what, they are going to solve that problem. And so that might take longer to solve the problem, but they've been in the industry or whatever. They know that problem is there. They're passionate to solve it. Sometimes they can go hungry for a while and just live on that passion that can drive them there. But it's a difficult thing. It's a difficult bridge to cross, as you said, in the industry, because that part is not an easy. It's not an easy part, and there needs to be a big enough payoff. You need to change construction sufficiently,
to be able to do
so that if it takes you 5 years to do it, it's a big enough pay. The way you can fix time is by having a bigger number at the end. And so if they solve a big enough problem in construction, and I think with the housing crisis that we have in this country, maybe a crisis is too much, but housing is unaffordable largely because we don't have enough houses. And so what would drive down the prices of houses? Well, if there were more. If there were 5 houses for every person and you had to pick which one you wanted to live in and the other 4 were empty, they'd be almost free. So if there were more houses, then the price of houses would drop. So if you could create something that there's a need for houses, if you could create something that makes them faster, there could be a bigger payoff at the end. So I think it has a lot to do with what thing you go after and if there's enough payoff to justify the time.
So it's not just about aggressive sales and getting your money's return. It's about actually taking time, working the bigger problem out, and then maybe making it, this is what I'm just saying, making it a little bit easier that a lot of people are joining it to make like the return faster.
Yeah. And if you think about it from the VC's perspective, VCs aren't deciding if they do or don't want to go into construction per se. They're deciding which thing they want to do. And it's not that they don't want to do your thing. It's just that they want to do this other thing better. This other thing's going to have a better return. So that's a battle I think we'll always fight. It's more of an economics one.
I think you answered all my questions. That's all I had. Like, this stuff is literally amazing and interesting. So definitely going to dig deep into it. I wonder what, I was thinking plumbing.
I mean, there's so many things that are needed in this country right now in the traditional blue collar jobs, in construction, in plumbing, and all those things. And what's happening that's a good thing is it's driving up the wages for all of those things. We complain about it because it drives up the price of a house. So a house becomes unaffordable. Well, that's because we don't have enough plumbers. So the price of each individual plumber is higher. That's good for people that go into plumbing. That's how markets work. So it is really interesting stuff. So I hope people learned a lot. Hope they learned about how construction is applying everything from just robotics to AI and machine learning and digital twinning, some of these interesting concepts that are getting applied to literally brick and mortars. This was a lot of fun. I hope you found it the same. I really thought it was interesting learning about the construction industry and how they're applying robotics, AI, machine learning, and just all kinds of high tech to the construction industry and where they're going to be in 10, 15, 20 years.
Wait, look on the floor. I think you forgot to like, subscribe, and follow. Yeah.
Thanks, everybody. Catch you next time.